Inter Miami is in the Eastern Conference Final. The World Cup just gave us major news, and Pochettino thinks the U.S. men's national team can win it all next summer. All that is coming up next. Welcome back to another episode of This Is Fútbol, the show where we break down the biggest stories in the game with honesty, passion, and zero filters. I'm your host, Danny Solana. With me, as always, the man who keeps this show balanced, sharp, and maybe a little too spicy sometimes, Nico. How are you doing, hermano?
How's everything, Danny? I'm excited, man. This is a nice week to get things going.
It is. It's a really nice week. But before we get into everything, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the little bell notification icon. That way it notifies you every time that we drop a video. Like we say, we try to drop one every week. And this week we have some nice topics to talk about, Nico. We have a lot to get into. Let's get right into it. Inter Miami, and not just Inter Miami, bro. Leo Messi leads Inter Miami into the Eastern Conference Final against the New York City FC this Saturday coming up. A 4-0 absolute thrashing at TQL Stadium, a place where, unfortunately, it was very hard for Inter Miami to find a win. I mean, I was surprised, but I was confident, and I don't know how you felt, but I'm excited. I'm excited that they're going to get to host a final. But what'd you think about the game?
I wasn't surprised that Miami was going to win the game because we did say that it was a high possibility that Miami was going to come out with the victory. What I was mostly surprised with were two things. Number one, the scoreline. Nobody could have predicted that Miami was going to win 4-0. And number two, Mascherano finally having the balls to bench Suarez.
Yes. And I love Suarez more than anybody. He's been a disappointment somewhat towards the end of the year, but it was the right call. It was the right call. We talked about it. We were covering a game last week. We talked about what they should do, and everybody was kind of agreeing that Suarez should start. And we didn't think that Mascherano would have, like you said, the balls to do what he did, but he did. He did it, and it worked out for him. And
And
let
it
me
worked
tell
to
you,
perfection, man.
Silvetti, Nico. Oh, that 19-year-old kid. I think he's going to be a record-breaking sale in MLS once he gets sold to Europe at some point. I think he's the real deal, man.
Yeah. He's come flying into the rotation.
Bro,
It's
how do
hard.
you
It's hard as
Argentinos,
a player.
how do you
It's hard as
Argentinos
a player.
always find these guys?
Yeah. Well, I mean, not everyone. There's a lot of Argentinos that are in the league that they're not so good, but for the most part, these young bucks have done a fantastic job in the league. But this kid, man, like I'm saying, it's hard to come into the league, midway through the season, uh, play somewhere else where it's completely different. It's a completely different environment. I guess it worked out for him, having, the surrounding that he has, that Latin American blood, all that Argentinian uh connection in the team, and he's working out fantastic for Inter Miami.
He is. He is another one of the guys that's working out fantastic towards the end of the season when you want to get hot. It's Tadeo Allende.
Phew.
Again, another brace. He's on fire, man. He's finally if he would have made all those chances like he's made in the last couple of games, he would have probably been the golden boot in the MLS because Messi left him one-on-one with the goalkeeper countless times in the
Plenty of
season.
times.
Yeah, and he just didn't do anything.
Yeah, yeah, but we're glad he's doing it now.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And then also, one of the players that's been heavily criticized since the start of this, since he came mid-season was Rodrigo de Paul. I thought a couple of days ago was one of his best games for Inter Miami. I thought he, transitioned really well into the attack with Messi. I thought he helped a lot on the defensive end. Busquets in the middle. And overall, I thought he completed the role that we all thought he was going to complete when he came here.
Yeah, and you can tell he's an elite player. Just his presence around the field, the way he positions himself in open spaces, how he receives his first touch, being able to read the game ahead of time. All those things come with, the eliteness that you can have as a player. and he's one of them. The only thing that I'm a little iffy about when it comes to his play is offensively. I feel like he could give you a lot more offensively. There was moments in the game where he had the chances of making the decision himself rather than passing the ball away, maybe taking a couple of shots because he's known for having a great shot outside of the box. So maybe seeing that more from him would benefit the team.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about Messi because Messi again is a factor in the game. He's a factor in every game he plays in. He had a goal. He had a few assists. The goal that he scored it made me laugh when he scored. I celebrated the goal, and then it made me laugh because I was thinking, as a defender, we both played defense. As a defender, how do you let the shortest person on the field header the ball into the goal? I mean, credit to Matteo Silvetti for the pass; he put it right on his head. But still, as a defender, you have to be looking, especially for Messi in the box. No,
Yeah, and not only that, man, just transition yourself back into the box. I think it was very, very bad play by Cincinnati, losing the mark the way they did, because Messi was the guy that opened up the play and he immediately just crashed the box. As a center back, if you can't see that, it's just nonsense. It's mind blowing.
it is. It is. It's absolutely mind blowing. Well, we're going to continue to talk about a little bit of the international game now, transitioning away from the MLS. We got some news today from FIFA on the World Cup, Nico. Apparently, they said that they're going to stagger the draw so that the first seed and the second seed are in opposite brackets so that they wouldn't face
Not
unless
not not
no.
the first seed. It's through FIFA rankings. So the number 1 and number 2 rankings in FIFA, which right now happen to be Spain and Argentina, they will be separated if only if they win their groups when the draw happens.
How do you feel about that? Because I mean, I'll give you my thoughts after your take, because I have a feeling that we're going to disagree on this.
I think this is a tennis tournament now. It's not FIFA World Cup where you're able to have moments in the draw or moments after group play where some favorite teams will be able to play against each other in maybe round of 16, quarterfinals. Now it's not going to happen. Everything's about having the best teams make it as far as possible. Everything's about marketing, everything's about money. And unfortunately, that's going to happen in this next extra large World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, look, I see what you're saying there. I in one way, I like the appeal because you're gonna get to see the best teams at the end of the tournament, and at the end of the day, that's what you want to see. The best teams make it to the end, but obviously the aura of the World Cup is that anybody can beat anybody on any given day. That's always been what the World Cup is about. We've had upsets. You've had the Costa Ricas, the Moroccos,
Yeah,
back in the day.
but at the end of the day, I could also say that the winners are always the same.
They are. There's only been what eight countries that have won the World Cup.
Right. In the
So
past few World Cups, even less.
right, even less. So, I mean, look, there's arguments to both sides. Now, the one thing that I think that FIFA is looking at this in a way is they're looking at it with the money signs in their eyes, right? Because
Oh, absolutely.
you're gonna get, let's say you do get an Argentina Spain, they win their groups, and you get an Argentina Spain in the final. That World Cup ticket, that World Cup final ticket, is going to be
Absurd.
the most expensive thing in the world.
Yep. Yep. You're talking about over $6,000 per ticket.
That's crazy, man. Six thousand
Yeah.
dollars per
It's
ticket.
not worth it.
No, like if you have a family, like if I want to take my son, that's $12,000 plus. I gotta fly to New York, right? And I gotta spend. They're probably gonna jack up the prices, obviously, for that
Yeah.
weekend. So I'm gonna spend another $1,000 on flights. So I'm gonna end up spending what I would spend on my mortgage in an entire year just to go to the World Cup.
Yeah. And by the way, you're not even getting a hotel room because you should be booking right now if you want to go to the World Cup final.
Breaking news, breaking news. Nico says it on This Is Fútbol. If you have not booked your hotel room in New York City or in the surroundings or your
Good luck
Airbnb,
finding one.
you're going to be late. You're going to be late. Obviously, the World Cup draw is next week, and we're super excited for the World Cup draw. I don't know
I
if
want to say
you,
something else with this topic,
yeah,
by the way, which I find it, I wouldn't say ridiculous, but I do find it a little iffy. Once the draw is set, we are not going to find out where each team plays until a day later. What does that mean? That it's going to be controlled by FIFA, where every single team plays against every single opponent.
yeah, that I
What do you
don't
feel about
like.
that?
I don't feel good about that. I don't like that. Obviously, we'll see how it turns out. If Uruguay ends up playing in Miami and playing close places that I can drive to, I'm going to be ecstatic about it. But
Right.
overall, I don't like that. Obviously, I think Mexico should play at least their group games in Mexico. The U.S.
They are.
I
They are.
think
Well,
should be able to
Mexico,
choose where they
Mexico,
play too.
USA, and Canada, we already know where they're playing. Mexico, USA, and Canada, we already know that they're playing. Mexico's going to be playing all their games in Mexico. USA is going to be playing all their games in the West Coast, and Canada is going to be playing their games in Canada. However, the rest of the teams, we don't know where they're going to be playing. But
Right,
I
and there's
assume the reason why they do this is because uh, it has a reasoning behind it. You're not going to put Colombia to play in Kansas City because there's a lot of Colombian population, maybe in New York, maybe in Miami. So a few of their games will be worth putting them in Miami for, population purposes. You want to see
absolutely.
those stadiums fill up. However, we do have 48 teams in this World Cup, and we are going to get games like Uzbekistan against Haiti. There's a possibility that can happen. I'm not saying those two countries specifically, but countries on the, you know, lower ranks are going to play against each other. And I want to see where they put them to play.
Well, we saw that in the Club World Cup already, right? Because we saw like the Mamelodi Sundowners playing against, I think it was one of the Korean teams or the Japanese teams that came over, and
Yeah.
there was
About 100
nobody in the
fans.
stadium. Yeah, right. There was 100 people, but at the end of the day, it ended up being a great game for for me. It was great because I was sitting
Yeah,
back in my
nonetheless,
chair. I was in my air conditioning at home instead of in the heat at 1:30 in the afternoon. I was drinking my soda and it was fine. But I think it'll be more attractive because it's the World Cup and it's the thing to do in the summer. If it gets promoted correctly leading up to the tournament, I think it's they're going to have a chance to really sell out a lot of these stadiums.
yeah, yeah, they're gonna have a lot of things to work on because there's a lot of handicaps this World Cup coming up. Not just selling out stadiums, but also the heat, man. That's gonna be a topic to talk about later on.
Absolutely. I mean, well, but they should be playing, mostly at night. I wouldn't expect them to be playing in the
You have
afternoon.
48 teams. You have 104 games in
Right,
the World Cup,
but you have some stadiums that have domes. So, like for example, you can play in Atlanta at three
but they're
o'clock in
not
the
FIFA.
afternoon.
Right, but they're not FIFA. A lot of these stadiums are not FIFA approved per se.
Well, but Atlanta is going to be one of the
Atlanta is going to be
sedes.
one of them. Yes,
So, and I
absolutely.
think Houston might be another one that has a dome. So you could use those that have domes to play the afternoon games. I mean,
Well,
that's my
what are you going to
reasoning.
do with Washington?
Yeah. Well, and Miami doesn't have a dome. Yeah, I get you. I
Philadelphia.
get you. Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. But still talking about the international scene, I saw the interview that you produced, by the way,
Yes,
on
sir.
Fútbol de Primera Radio that Andrés Cantor did with Mauricio Pochettino. And man, let me tell you, fantastic. First of all, congratulations, fantastic interview. Second of all, the thing that really impacted me the most, or that stuck out to me the most, was that Pochettino said it very clearly and he said it very rationally, where he said, you know, we can win the whole thing, or we're going to win the whole thing. He said something like that, and to me, the fact that he emits that to his team has them really believing, because after that 5-1 against Uruguay, and I was there at the stadium, we were there. I mean, this team really has Pochettino's mindset, and this team could be very dangerous going into the World Cup.
Yeah, and you know it. You know it more than anybody, Danny. When it comes to World Cups, it's about momentum, man. It doesn't mean, you could be playing bad football right now, but 6 months from now, once you're in there and you're playing lights out, that's that's what you're taking on. That's what you're taking on. And this team, it's elevating their game to where Pochettino wants them to elevate their game. And I'm not gonna sit here and say yes, they can win the World Cup because maybe that's the message he gives out and that's the message they believe. Because obviously USA, it's a big nation and they have to believe that they can win a World Cup. However, I do see them making some noise in the next World Cup. What do I mean by making some noise? I think this team could be capable of making a quarterfinals or semifinals in a World Cup. Maybe make some noise, maybe do some damage like Morocco did in Qatar's World Cup.
Well, that's who Pochettino, funnily, he mentioned it in his interview where he said, Morocco, they believed and that's how
Yeah,
they got through. And now they meaning the U.S. men's national team has to believe, because if you don't believe, then you're not going to do anything, and this team has been heavily criticized. The last game against Uruguay, we saw a very heavy MLS side, and they completely dominated Uruguay. It was 4-0 in the first half. Again, a record. First time that a team scores 5 goals on a CONMEBOL, CONCACAF team scores 5 goals on a CONMEBOL team. First time ever in the history of Uruguay that they get 4 goals scored on them in the first half. I mean, you're talking about a lot of records. I got to talk to some of the players, and again, they're believing that not to continue using that word, but yeah, it's incredible. And again, I'm not going to be rooting for them. I'll be rooting for Uruguay, but it's incredible to see how the fan base is kind of surrounding this team, and how they're starting to build a fan base, and they can get back to where it was in the 90s, where the team was really beloved and they had a lot of fans going into the stadiums, and that's really what I hope for this team.
yeah, and that's what they need right now. They need that extra push from the fans. They need the fans to start believing in this team because I feel like Pochettino, he's already changed the chip. He's already changed the mentality in the players. He has given them that identity. It took him a little bit of time. Yes, we're not going to sit here and say everything was great when Pochettino started because that's not the case. There was still moments where the players didn't believe uh, that the message was the right one. There was a lot of players, there was a lot of speculations. I wouldn't say players, but there was a lot of speculations of players wanting to be back with, the Greg Berhalter type of ways. Um, but Pochettino kept, he kept strong. His message is clear. The players have the identity now. Everyone that's in the boat believes 100% that he's the right guy. And I'm really excited, man. I'm really excited to see where things go forward with this team. I think that this team could make some noise. This team's gonna be a dark horse in the World Cup next year. And this team is not about the superstars. Well, I don't want to say superstars, but the stars that we know um that US has. The Christian Pulisic's, the Weston McKennie's, the Team Weas, all those guys. This team is not about that. This team's about 26 guys dying on the field to, potentially win something for their national team.
And talking about winning, before we wrap it up, what do you realistically, and I'll give you my prediction, what do you realistically think the USA would be a positive result for the USA coming out of this World Cup? What do you think would be, let's say, obviously winning it is the goal, but getting to what point would be a positive result for Pochettino and his squad?
Everything over 6 games. This World Cup is a little longer, so you're gonna have round of 32. Anything over 6 games, I think will be a good World Cup. And it's also about how do you come out, because it's one thing that in this short tournaments, yeah, you can lose. Unfortunately, there's moments where you can lose by a mistake or, it can happen, it wasn't your day, but you gave it all out. If USA comes out the same way they have come out in the last 4 games, in these last 4 friendly games, I think the results are going to be there.
I agree, Nico. I agree. I mean, I think that they have a good chance to get to a quarterfinal, like you said earlier, to a semifinal if the chips fall in their place. And obviously, in a World Cup, not only do you have to be good, but you have to be lucky. At some
Yep,
point, you have to have the luck falling your way. So if they can get all that lined up, then they could make some real damage and really get U.S. soccer back on the map in terms of international football. And not only that, but along with what's going on in the MLS, which we talked about, and Messi leading the Inter Miami into the Eastern Conference Final and possibly hosting a MLS Cup final next, in
that's
a
epic,
couple of
man.
weeks.
That's
Yeah,
epic.
it would be crazy to close out Chase Stadium like that. So a lot of awesome news that we talked about this week on This Is Football. Nico, any last thoughts?
Let's see what happens on Saturday. I'm excited to see possibly Inter Miami making an MLS Cup for the first time. It will be great for the city, not only for the city, but like you said, for the league. And it will be the tip of the iceberg for Messi's career to possibly win one of those trophies.
But before we go, if they win the MLS Cup, you think Suarez retires?
Has to.
Has to. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning into This Is Football. Like always, Nico, Danny, like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and we'll be back next time.